And we have an expert standing by to take your questions. But first, we're going to talk to the expert, Jim Helms. He's the owner of Jim Helms Dog Pals. We're talking about bringing pets home for the first time. And now we have a couple pets today. We have my dog, Rollins, and your dog. What do people need to know and need to purchase before they bring a pet home?
Well, to be honest with you, what I tell people is you got to think about what kind of dog you're going to get, all right, even before you even go out shopping. And then when you know you're getting that dog coming home, you've got a whole bunch of stuff you want to buy, all right? And one of the things that I do different from most people, you can notice on this table, this is a bunch of stuff that we need. You notice there's only one bowl. I only use this for water. I do not recommend feeding a dog for the first 6 months out of a bowl.
Because you think you should hand them the food.
You should hand them the food.
And that's a little different than what a lot of people out there think.
Yep. And part of that reason is, you guys have mentioned more than once when I come with my dogs, my dog pays attention to me. One, I've built that bond from the day one that they came home. And if you don't have time, there's nothing wrong with just taking some food and throwing it on the ground and letting them eat it.
But knowing that all the pieces come from you.
Come from me. So it starts to build that bond, you start to build some reliability with your dog, and you get a dog who thinks that you're the cookie. All right? And you want to be that. You want to be that cookie, because if you don't, and they see that squirrel coming down the road or something, or that other dog, and they start barking, you have a hard time dealing with it. So starting it right there is one of the big things that I tell people. So you do need a bowl, a water bowl. All right?
Not a food bowl for the first 6 months, in your opinion.
I don't say that. If it's a puppy, you're going to want, these are a bunch of the toys that I have in my house. You can see they're kind of dirty and they're used. But you want some kind of rubber toys. You want rope type toys. Kong balls are great. We've had Kong recipes on the show before, and I'm sure we can look those up on the web.
But those come in all different sizes too, so if you get a smaller dog, you want to make sure you get the right Kong size for them. Right.
And then you want to fill them up and freeze them, and again, I'm sure you guys have some of those archive sites on the web.
Yeah, sure do.
MyMassappeal.com, that's where you go for them.
I love toys that the dogs can chew on and kind of catch.
Yeah, so that they don't chew your shoes.
Yes. Yep.
Don't put shoes on the floor of the new puppy. Learn that the hard way.
And I tell people you need to have at least a half a dozen, if not 12 toys when you bring home that dog. And not just all the same thing. Again, rubber, soft toys. She likes the little squeaky toys.
Variety. It's the spice of life, right?
And then if the dog is chewing, then you can say, oh, offer them that toy and try to find what their favorite is. Eventually you'll know what your dog loves the most, and then you kind of concentrate on that. You need a first aid kit. A lot of people don't say that, and a lot of times it doesn't show up on a lot of websites you go to, but there's a good chance you're going to have some sort of injury with your dog. And part of that first aid kit is the thermometer. All right, one of the easiest ways of starting to tell is your dog healthy, if they're feeling well, is taking their temperature. Are they starting to run a fever? Because your dog's not going to tell you.
Right.
Okay. Dog food, of course. Here we've got a whole it's kind of not really holistic, but it's a grain-free dog food. It's a high quality. I tell people buy the best dog food that you can afford, but stay away from the store brands like the Big Y's, the ShopRites, stuff like that, because they're basically selling low-quality food.
And what I've found in my search is that oftentimes you get the cheaper dog food, you have to give them 5 cups a day. The dog food that's twice as expensive, you only have to give them half as much food. So you're spending the same amount for a higher quality product.
Yep. And a lot of people are afraid of feeding raw and stuff like that. You can get some raw food cheaper than you can buy a good quality dog food. So you want to think about what you're doing, and you're going to come home and your breeder's going to have recommendations. Don't automatically swap. What I do with my dogs is I take whatever the breeder gave me, or if I had to buy a bag, then I would take the bag that I want to feed. I literally just mix the two together, and I feed it until it runs out, and then I just go right over to my other one.
Now, Jim, how do you get your home ready? We bought the toys. How do we get our house ready? It's like baby proofing, I can imagine.
I would, yes, absolutely. You got to get your home ready for the new edition.
It's actually worse, I think, because our dogs are going to go through and start chewing wires. I mean, babies, when they start calling, they can start pulling the wires and stuff out, or pulling them and knocking over the TV and stuff like that. But our dogs, there's a good chance they may start chewing on some of this stuff and actually get electrocuted, and it has happened. So you really have to think about, again, as you're baby-proofing your house, what other things do you need to remove? All right, move poisonous plants. Some people don't think, oh, they've got poinsettias sitting in the house, but those could be deadly to a dog. So you need to be able to remove those type of plants.
And socialize them, because that's important too.
And they're out here having a great time. Having a crate, and we're going to talk about crate in a few minutes. An X-pen is really good, and we can show that later on. Having gates to kind of block off certain areas, and find out a place where you can put your dog where, if they're having a potty accident, that it's going to be like on a tile floor, or worst case, even a hardwood floor, because they're easier to clean than a carpet.
You want to minimize the mistakes.
Minimize the mistakes.
Great tips, Jim. We're going to be with you throughout the show. We're going to learn.
I need a puppy now.
See, maybe
now I feel like I'm unprepared.
No, we
I
need
know
a
what to
mass
do.
appeal puppy. So, Jim, later in the show, we're going to talk about crate training, so much more, and we're going to take your questions. So all you have to do is give us a ring. We're back outside answering all your pet questions with Jim Helms, the owner of Jim Helms Dog Pals. We have Jose on the line. Jose, are you there? We will get him back on the line. In the meantime, Jim, let's talk dog crates, because crate training is so very important. How do we get started when we bring our new pet home?
Well, the first thing I want to say, because as a trainer, I go out to a lot of people's houses, and I've literally had people say I could never crate train my dog. I like to start by saying, think about your crate as if you had a baby at home. I guarantee you've used a crib, you've used playpens, you use car seats. That's all this is a safety device. People think it's a kennel, it's a prison. It's something you have to do with your dog, especially if you bring home a new dog.
And it's also something that can make your dog feel comforted, because
Yes.
it's their little slice of home.
Yep, I have dogs that will literally just go into a crate and just lay there with the door open because they enjoy it.
My dog will do that too. You put a nice little bed
Yep.
in there and you're good to go. But how do you start the process? Because the dog, A, doesn't know how to go to the bathroom outside and doesn't know that he should live in there. So how do you teach them that?
Well, if you've started doing training with the dog and if you've done clicker training, you can use a clicker, or you can just take your food bowl. In this case, I will use it. We kind of talked about that a minute ago. I would just take it and start feeding them inside the crate.
Because you want to associate good things with happening inside
Right.
the crate.
You never want to yell at your dog and shove them in the crate. That's a bad thing. But you can just start playing with the food bowl. You can start taking food. You can just start throwing stuff in there. And eventually, I tell people, come up with a name. Whether you want to be really nice and call it a bed, a home, you call it a crate. I mean, I once got yelled at for calling it a crate and said, you can't do that, it's a bed. But just start throwing it in there, and as they start to go in, she will eventually just start to stay there. But now she knows if I say crate, she's going to go in.
So once you attach the word to it,
then you can call that. And I can be halfway around the house and tell her crate, and she's going to go into the crate.
and I know people might be hearing a click. In case you're hearing a click at home, Jim is doing clicker training with the dog, and that's positive affirmation training, right?
Yep, and it tells the dog I just did something right.
Now, a lot of people, myself included, we have to go to work. My wife and I, we both work, the 9 to 5 kind of job, so we have to keep our dogs in the crate for a good chunk of the day. What's the best way to familiarize them with that and elongate the time that they can stay in the crate?
Well, I know for me, when I get a puppy, I always try to pick a time period when I know I can be home, or my wife can be home, so we can work with them. If you have a really young dog, kind of the golden rule is if the dog is a month old, he's not going to hold his urine very long. If he's 6 months old, he can hold it for 6 hours. It's kind of a general rule. Some dogs can do a lot better than that. Some will do worse. So what you want to start by doing is you get them in the crate, and you're just in the house. Maybe you're watching TV, you're cleaning the house, something like that. Every once in a while, you can treat them in there if you want, and just get them used to the crate while you're home first.
And this way, it won't be as bad when you're not home.
Nope.
Now, I think we have Jose back on the line. Jose, can you hear us?
You lying.
Oops.
I don't know. Can you hear Jose right now?
No, I can't.
I cannot. Oh,
Okay.
so basically, Jose's dealing with a lazier dog and maybe advancing in age.
Hello?
How do you get
Oh,
the
there we
pet?
go.
Oh, hey, Jose, what's happening?
Hey, yes. I have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Jose. Oh, we seem to have lost him again. but-
Jose might not have a question for us, but I know he was talking earlier, and I think he might have written on our Facebook page. He's dealing with a dog that has a lack of desire to go and be active. How do you fix
Okay.
that?
Well, one, it may not be fixable. I mean, I'd have to ask him, okay, how old is this dog? I mean, when I was 18, I would run around until 4 in the morning.
That's true, yeah. But now,
I don't
someone
do
tells
that
me to
anymore.
go run, I say no thanks.
Well, don't forget that, I'm in bed by 9 now.
Exactly.
But one, how old is the dog? We want to kind of know that. The other thing is, if he's a younger dog, is he ill? I mean, I told you guys before we started that Ember was sick recently, just had surgery. The reason we knew is she was just not herself. She was just kind of laying around a lot more. So
Yeah.
is there something physically wrong with your dog? Is the dog overweight? So they just can't get up anymore because they've got too much body fat on them and they just don't want to run around. Maybe food can play a role. If they've got a poor quality food, it's just like that nutrition thing that we can do. They may not really be able to have that energy to do what they want. And it could be also the heat. I mean, something like this. So you got to watch your dog and when you're going to work with them.
Now, Jim, we only have time for one more call, and I think we have Pete on the line. Pete, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I can hear you.
Hi,
Pete.
Pete.
How's it going?
Good.
So what's your question?
My question is we have a new dog we adopted from a shelter a couple of months ago, and whenever the dog goes to visit other people, all it wants to do is attach on and hump other dogs. And I was wondering if there's a cure for this problem.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we're having that problem out here with our two
I was gonna
dogs.
say, I don't know how low the camera shot's going, but that's sometimes an issue. How do you fix that?
One, you want to start by making sure you have a negative word, like I use or knock it off. So you got to start to teach the dog, look, that is not allowed. The other thing that I like to tell people is start to come up with a polite greeting. So if I want to come up with Amber, she's out there sniffing, sit. And I may actually start teaching her to sit for coming up to other people and even other dogs, and I will actually maybe even treat her as you start to touch her. So what I want to do is teach her the correct greeting behavior is to sit, say hello, and wait to be touched versus going over there and getting attached to that.
So the people know what to do, or the dogs know what to do when they meet people.
Right. But you definitely want to have some sort of negative word, like saying or knock it off, and make sure the dog understands that's an incorrect behavior.
How'd that do it for you, Pete? Does that answer your question? Well, Pete hung up. Either way, thanks so much for watching. So, crate. Pretty much we've got all we need to know. What do you think about making a room in there for the dog? You know, putting a blanket in there, putting a little dog bed in there.
If they're not a chewer, yes. Some people, again, it comes down to that human emotions. Oh, we have to make our dogs comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, at this time of year, my dogs, we don't have air conditioning on. They would rather lay on a tile floor, something hard and cold, versus having that blanket, which actually makes it hotter inside there.
Well, it's so funny because I have that conversation with my wife all the time. We all, like, some of us want to get her the really nice, the fluffy dog bed for Rollins, but at the same time, he's a dog. He's used to lying on the floor. So
Yep.
I guess time of year is great because you're right.
Time of year, and the dog, some dogs do love that bed, so I would encourage it, but just don't be that human where he has to have that bed, or if he's a dog who chews and he's chewing up the bed, take it out until you get him out of that chewing phase.
No, how long is that chewing phase roughly? Or could it be forever?
It can be a long time. I still, even to this day, I have 8 or 9 marrow bones laying around my floor right now because my dogs still love to chew, and they're 8 and 10 years old.
You never know when it's going to end.
But
Jim,
the puppy thing is just giving them a lot of stuff to chew on to start with.
the more the better. Thank you so much, but we're not done with Jim yet, and we're going to answer more of your questions later on in the show.
Knock it off.
We're back outside with Jim Helms. He's the owner of Jim Helms Dog Pals. But let's start it off with a phone call. I believe we have Julie on the line. Julie, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi,
Yeah.
Julie. What's
Hey,
your
Julie.
question?
I have recently just got an 8-week-old puppy, Beagle puppy.
Congratulations.
And we do have a crate that I was going to attempt to try to put her in at night to sleep. But the first night I tried to put her in there, she started whimpering, crying, and it just got louder and louder. And I didn't know how to introduce it to her so that she's used to it and will be able to sleep in there at night by herself.
Well, one of the things that I like to tell people is don't do it all at once. I mean, of course, you're going to have to put your dog in that crate that first night, but start working with them during the day. Some of the tips that we used earlier, feeding them in there, giving them something. Go ahead and give them something even when you go to bed. So that frozen Kong ball or something like that, that they can kind of keep themselves busy until they wear themselves out and they just fall asleep.
Now, Jim, what about the placement of the crate? I know a lot of people, maybe I have my crate in my kitchen. It's far away from where we sleep. Is that something that maybe they can move the crate to the bedroom and then
Yes.
eventually move it away?
I actually recommend, especially when you first get that dog, is to have them in your same room. I mean, dogs are den animals and they want to be with their pack. So put them with you. It can actually help comfort them. And then the other part that humans don't want to listen to, you got to let them cry.
It's like having a baby. Sometimes
like
you have to
having a
let
baby.
them cry to go to sleep.
And if you get up and you reward them, I mean, if you start yelling at them, you're still giving them attention, and you may actually make it worse, and it'll get harder to get rid of. So you may go several nights without much sleep, but it's the best way of doing it.
That's the way to do it. Julie, I hope we answered your question. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Good luck. And that
Thank
leads
you.
us actually to our next topic, and our dogs finally, they're playing nicely, but it's because they have toys. So we're talking about what to do for your dogs when they're alone, because oftentimes if you are at work, they're alone to their own devices for a few hours at a time.
Yes.
So what are things that we can do to keep them happy when they're by themselves?
Well, you brought some great toys out today that you use with Rollins. They're called smart toys or interactive dog toys. There are a couple of different names. And one of them you've got over here, I don't know if anybody can see it, is you put a piece of food in it and the dog has to find it. I like things that are called Kong wobblers. You basically fill them full of food and the dog has to sit there and play with it and the food falls out. Similar to your toy that you've got right here, which Ember hasn't learned how to use yet, but she's really trying.
Well, let's see if this one can work too. So we put the treat in, and it falls to one of the sides, and the dog needs to figure out where the treat is and then retrieve it. So this can keep them busy, you know, depending on their intelligence for seconds to minutes. And there's all these wobbler treats. What about something to chew on, though?
Again, I love marrow bones. I love the Kong toys, or toys that you can fill with nutritious products. I mean, I don't want people going out and buying the Kong toy and then filling it with the Kong food. It's not really the best stuff out there. But just making those good Kong recipes, and it can take hours. And a lot of times, if I give my dogs a marrow bone, they'll sit there and have that thing for 2 or 3 hours, and then they'll sleep for 2 or 3 hours just because they've been so active with it.
And
so giving them something to do inside the house is a great thing, because a bored dog will generally get in trouble, chewing up the furniture, pulling down the curtains, something to that effect. So you want to give them something to do.
Eventually, we know we start the dog in the crate, but can you eventually try to expand their world? For example, my dog has access to his crate and then the kitchen in time, which allows him during the day to branch out a little bit more.
Right. Once you start to gain trust and you take it slow, my dogs have full range of their house all day long. And so they have room to lay down, they get room to separate, and so they can be actually more comfortable for them as well. And you just got to go slowly until you can trust them.
Now, Jim, I believe we have another caller on the line. Are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi, what's your question?
Yes, I have a boxer. He's probably 7 or 8 years old, and he's terrified of the thunder, fireworks, any kind of noise. Shakes violently out of control for probably a minute or so.
Okay. So one of the first things to try that's really easy is there's a product out there that's called the Thunder Shirt. It basically wraps around the body and actually puts some pressure on the body, and it's actually relaxing.
It's like a hug for the dog.
It's like a hug for us, all right? And it can really help, and it's one of the easiest things to start doing. There is medications if it's really severe, and there's also calming music. There's one out that's by Rachel McPherson, who you play this during that thunderstorm and helps them relax. And if none of that's working, I actually tell people to start playing thunder inside the house and keeping it quiet.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Well, and this time of year too, we just had the 4th of July. It's tough because you need your dogs to stay safe even when there's all of that noise out there. Jim, thank you so much. Callers, thank you.